Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. Welcome to Just One Truth. In this episode 7 of Decoding the Gospel of Thomas, we're going to start on verse number 79. We left off at 78 in the last one. Just in case you haven't seen my previous videos, I'll let you know that I treat Jesus like a Buddha. That a Buddha nature is the same as a Christ nature. Buddha nested his teachings in a cryptic manner. Jesus nested his teachings in a cryptic manner. However, it is also under the layer of a religion. This was meant to help it carry far and wide. But the teaching is still inside. We use the same process of making it about ourselves and making it about our subconscious mind, and it reveals what the teaching is. It's an inner spiritual teaching. Okay, let's move right on to verse number 79. A woman in the crowd said to him, "Hail to the womb that carried you, and to the breasts that fed you." He said to her, "Hail to those who have heard the word of the Father, and have truly kept it. For there will be days when you will say, 'Hail to the womb that has not conceived, and to the breasts that have not given milk.'" Okay, this is a fun one, and it doesn't seem like it's a personal spiritual inner teaching, but perhaps it is. This one, I'm telling you, I'm going to go for it, but I'm being pretty theoretical on this one. At the first layer, the outward-looking layer, it really sounds like he's telling this person who is saying, "Bless your mother for having you." He's saying, you're going to be happy one day when there aren't as many people, or you're going to wish there weren't so many people, that there weren't breasts feeding babies and wombs having them, for the people that don't keep the word of the Father. That's the outer looking meaning to the verse. The womb, that's the element right here that I don't really see in other places. However, if we use the rest of the teachings of Gnosticism and look at that as a metaphoric representation of the mind, of the heart, of the soul, the womb, this place where the offspring of you comes from, the manifestations of your thoughts and your desires, your dreams, the things that you want to do and that you actually, well, I don't know that you actually have to physically do them. Sometimes thinking them is enough. It's already done. The process is there. In spiritual teachings with the Buddha and with Jesus, where Buddha talks emptiness and Jesus talks about blessing the soul that is poor, that is empty, these very strange representations of an emptiness. If this is the womb, and he's suggesting that you're going to be glad to see ones that have not produced things. This would be a monastic person, or somebody who is very empty, that doesn't have a lot of activity. And by activity in this case, I mean stillness of mind, quiet, peace of heart, peace of soul, peace of mind. The mind is really where it comes from. You can't have a wild mind and say, "I need to have peace of heart," and then focus on your heart. Your heart pumps blood. You have to focus on your mind. It often seems to us like it is something from our heart because we feel it in our core. We feel it in our body. We feel it centralized around here, our emotions. When we're depressed or when we're ecstatic or all points in between, we feel it from our central nervous system, which is controlled by the brain. The brain is the element that we have to focus on. But this specifically says the word of the Father. The word of the Father for a Christian in their time would have been God. Since this is a secret teaching that is nested in something that is meant to survive, meant to be carried around in the masses of people, I look at the word of the Father as like the word of the Buddha, the teaching, the very specific requirements to purge yourself, to clear your thinking, to clean your thinking, to get rid of the thoughts that are harmful to you and to others. You recognize them by how they emerge. Their hate, their hurt, their shame. Those are the things that you need to become empty of. And so there we go. I think if we were to put this verse in modern terms today without the cryptic nature of it, without embedding it in something and making it difficult to understand, something you have to figure out, it would say something like, there's going to be days when you wish everybody got this, that there weren't so many people that don't. And I think we can look around the world today and see that nothing's changed from his time till now. We still look and think, I wish people would get this. Okay, moving on to verse number 80. Jesus says, whoever has come to know the world has found the dead body. But whoever has found the dead body, of him the world is not worthy. Okay, we can see that this is a very familiar sounding Gnostic teaching. On the surface, we don't see a way to have this make any sense. However, when we turn it inward, we can see references to other verses with respect to being dead and alive and that sort of thing. So the dead body here is metaphoric for the person that is a product of their environment. On a regular basis, we would all think that, oh, yeah, we're not a product of our environment. We are making choices about how we interact with it. We don't realize that we are reacting to what we see. And the choice that you're making is really the choice to continue to interface with that world. We are, in essence, products of our surroundings. We are dead. We've come to know the world, and we found a dead body. But when you find the dead body, of him the world is not worthy. When you get to a point where you realize, oh, my gosh, I'm a dead body. I am a product of the environment. I am a product of what is happening. I'm a product of my conditioning, my upbringing, my belief system, and I've got to let all of that go. I want to not be a product of the world. I want to be a product of myself and make a difference. You are thought to be dead when you are essentially a product of everything that you've been given. You are alive once you realize that and say, oh, I'm going to let all that go. My brain's just been programmed, and I'm going to dump my programming. Rebirth. You're alive. The world is not worthy, then, is a way to say that it's not good enough for me to be a product of what is happening out there. All the things that I see, all the things that I observe, all the experiences I have as I get caught up emotionally in things. You've stepped back from that. The world is not worthy. It doesn't mean that you don't live in the world or that you don't need the world or you don't enjoy the world. It just means that your personal awareness of self and what is going on means that what is happening in the world is no longer the influence over who and what you are. Okay, moving on to verse 81. Jesus says, whoever has become rich should be king, and the one who has power should renounce it. This one seems to take a rather obscure path. And, the keys that I talk about as far as turning it inward and making it about yourself, making it metaphoric representations of who and what you are, making it about your subconscious mind, remembering that they didn't know what a brain was or mind was, that whatever they saw in the background running and operating and how you were functioning when you weren't consciously paying attention, or what acted out of you when you didn't want to act out that way, that was the soul, demon possession. They were a superstitious people. But it was 2,000 years ago. I'll give them that. Yeah, we need to understand that. In this case, we see whoever has become rich should be king. What does that sound like if you read it on the surface level? If you become rich, you should rule the place. What if there's 100 people that become rich? You got to have 100 kings? That doesn't work. And the one who has power should renounce it. If you become king, you're the one with the power. You should renounce it. So what is this saying? If you have become rich, you should just disappear? Yeah. We want to find things in here. So let's get rid of the surface meaning and make it about ourselves. And we know that throughout the Gospel of Thomas and other Gospels of Jesus, he has this saying about, blessed are the poor in spirit. And so poor in those cases means empty, devoid of. If we try to apply that here, what would be the king? The king would be the ruler of yourself. If you become rich, if you become full of things, you become the ruler of yourself. Does that make sense? And the one who has the power should renounce it, which means you should get rid of it, which means you should purge yourself. It seems like this circular way of saying get rid of everything that makes you what you think is wealthy. Jesus himself looked like a mendicant monk. But if we took it to mean something like that, then that would be of the physical world and not the spiritual world. So I don't think this has to do with getting rid of your physical possessions, but getting rid of your mental, your psychological possessions, the things that you've accumulated. And I've emphasized this in other videos, but not this one so far. When I mean getting rid of things, I mean getting rid of the things that prevent you from getting to the kingdom of heaven within, or what you would understand as Buddha's nirvana. Peace, love, joy. You don't get rid of everything. You don't get rid of peace, love, and joy. You don't get rid of compassion. You don't get rid of the things that create joy and love and help and understanding in the community and in yourself and in your life. You get rid of the things that get in the way of that. The whole idea of finding inner peace is to clean out your head, to clean out your soul, to eradicate all of the shame, the pain, the suffering, the hurt, the things that have happened, to view things in your life in such a way to affect the healing. That's really what you're trying to accomplish here. Christ is something different. That consciousness, that non-human, but that concept of a teaching, of a path, of a way of being. Anyway, you can see this one seems to be pretty bizarre. If I get anything out of it, though, it is indeed that you should, that this is another way of very obscurely saying, blessed are the poor in spirit. Moving on to 82. Jesus says, the person who is near me is near the fire, and the person who is far from me is far from the kingdom. This one to me seems considerably more straightforward. This is where we say Jesus says the person who is near me is near the fire. This is where Jesus we look at and say, this is not a person teaching. This is not an individual out there saying, I am the Son of God, listen to me and do this. This is somebody else's writing about a concept that Jesus was not in existence, but the Christ consciousness was. The person who is near me is near the fire. I think we would probably all agree that the fire is representative of illumination. We see it in Jesus' teachings in other words too, and other verbiage, like not putting the candle underneath a bushel, but leaving it out so that all can see. Illumination of what though? Easy. Spiritual teaching, spiritual illumination, knowledge, the answers. And the person who is far from me is far from the kingdom. The kingdom in Jesus' vernacular is the kingdom of heaven within, which is the state of bliss, the state of nirvana in Hebrew terms. So the person who is far from this teaching is far from that kingdom of heaven within. Moving on to verse 83. Jesus says, the images are visible to humanity, but the light within them is hidden in the image. The light of the Father will reveal itself, but his image is hidden by his light. Okay, to me, this one is a bit of a head scratcher. I think that I can see an explanation to the first sentence, but not necessarily the second one. And that might grow as we continue on here. It might come to me. Or to you, and you might put a note down below. Here's what it means. The images are visible to humanity, but the light within them is hidden in the image. We have to define some terms. What is an image? And what is light? Humanity, I think we've got that. I think the image in this case, if we call that the manifestation of whatever the action is, good or bad, it doesn't matter. The image is something that we can see. It is viewable. That's visible to humanity. People see what you do, no matter who they are or what it is you do. That's observable. But the light within them is hidden in the image. That means that the motivating factor for that to happen, again, whether it's good or bad. If somebody is acting out in a very hurtful way, it's because they have hurt inside. People see the hurt that you're doing, but they don't see the hurt that it comes from. The light within the image of that is hidden in the image. People are focused on, oh, you did a bad thing. They don't understand that you did it because bad things have happened to you and it's acting out. And that in all likelihood, you don't have a handle on it. You don't know it. You don't realize it. That something from your past that has created your perceptions is the light that makes that image appear. We are known by our fruits should sound familiar to everybody. I think this is basically saying that what we do is motivated by something inside of us. What comes out of us is what is inside of us. But that people do not recognize what drives the behavior. They only see the behavior and judge the behavior for what it is. And even though I just described an image of something derogatory, things that are positive and beneficial are the same thing. People see you do them. They don't realize that there's something behind that. This is Jesus' version of as within, so without. Okay, now taking a look at the second one, the one that I told you I struggle with a little bit. The light of the Father will reveal itself, but his image is hidden by his light. We can use the same technique and the same definitions. I'm sure that these verses belong together and that the terms light mean the same thing in each one of them. Images means the same thing in each one of them. I'm not a supernatural believer, and that's where I struggle with this one. I don't know what the authors of this did, and I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to become a historical individual with respect to Gnosticism. I don't know that they thought the Father was God. And I know that they didn't believe in the Christian God or that version, that they had a couple of different variations there. And I don't even want to get into that because I don't think it's important. In this case, I'm still looking at the Father and defining it as the knowledge. The light of the Father will reveal itself. What does that mean? That the energy, the capacity, the motivation behind the knowledge will reveal itself. And, that sounds okay. You see somebody acting a certain way, you want to follow what that is. You can make observations and I'm certain you can see what they're made out of. But his image is hidden by his light. That's where it falls apart for me. That's where I don't know what that means, and I would rather just set it off to the side and admit that I don't have that one. But I can also look at this and say that it doesn't have, or it doesn't appear to have, the kind of spiritual personal impact that one would need to take on personally. Something like making the two into one so that you can move this mountain, or weeding your garden, or things like that that are very specific. I need to do this with my mind. Okay, moving on to verse 84. Jesus says, "When you see your likeness, you are full of joy. But when you see your likeness that came into existence before you, they neither die nor become manifest. How much will you bear?" Okay, boy, they would not be fun if they weren't this obscure sometimes, huh? This one is something I speculate again. And I know early on in the series of decoding these, I would just set these off to the side and say, I don't want to mess with them. I'll let them go for now. I'll think about them more. And as I've been going through these, different ideas are coming to me and I'm throwing things out. And I've decided it's helpful, I think, to go ahead and at least discuss what my ideas are. It's kind of like the first step in brainstorming. I'm sure maybe I can say something that makes somebody out there go, oh, bingo, you know what? That's not it, but, and then take it the next step and throw it back at me. This one almost sounds like two different verses at first, like they don't belong together, but the verbiage is such that they obviously do. In this case, what I find difficult is what do they mean by likeness? We know what the word means, but if we look at the way it's being used here, we know that they're not using the word likeness as specifically likeness. It's carrying a different meaning, a secret meaning. So when you see your likeness, you are full of joy. I'm almost thinking that when you have the capacity on this path and this growth to see the things that make you happy, the things that you're functioning with, the things that are good. You're learning things, you're applying techniques, you're making changes, and it's effective. I don't know how to put that into any different terms. You're full of joy. You are happy about what is going on. You're making big changes. And you feel the effects of those changes. Is that likeness? Of course, initially in the simplest form, you would think when you find somebody else that's on this path, you would have that kind of joy. They're like you. But then it becomes a physical verse and not a spiritual, inner-looking verse. It's about the world, not about you personally. Let me take it to the next sentence and say, but when you see your likeness that came into existence before you, they neither die nor become manifest. How much will you bear? Our likeness is the concepts, the beliefs, the ideas that we have. And in the first verse, we were full of joy. We were making our likenesses. We were making our changes. We were making the changes to our thought processes that were affecting a change in our life and making us feel better. But we get to a point along the way where we realize, boy, there are things that I'm carrying that maybe they're not acting out. Maybe they're not part of the anger and the shame. They're parts of something else. They're part of a belief system. They're part of thinking that when I was raised, I was told something continuously about brown people, that they're all bad. And maybe you think, well, I don't think that, but a part of me still thinks that. There's still that part that is in place. I still haven't gone back and addressed the initial teaching. And even though I don't believe that and I stack something else on top of it, once in a while, thoughts will occur to me that you look at and go, where did that come from? I don't think that way. They're coming from your mind. They're not manifesting, but they're not dying. How much will you bear? In the Gospel of Philip, if you've gone there, and I'm not going to go jump on that verse, I covered in one of the other these videos. There's one about exposing things, the root of wickedness, pulling it out, exposing it, and that's how you recognize it, and that's how you see it. There's a line in there that says, Jesus went in and cleared out the whole place while others did it only partially. Is that what this is about? You carry things with you that you're like, no, I'm going to leave them in place. They're beliefs that are, not quite right. I don't know. How much will you bear? There's another verse, and I'm going to paraphrase this. We've already been through it, but it's the one that says, if a person who knows the all knows that they are deficient in one thing, they are deficient completely. Is that what this is hinting towards? The idea that purity is purity, and anything else is not purity. I don't know. It would fit with the teaching. It would fit with what the Buddha taught. It's all or nothing. You don't just fix a couple of things and say, yay, I'm enlightened. No, you're not. That's all I got. I don't know what else to do with this verse. So let's move on to number 85. Jesus says, Adam came from a great power and a great wealth, but he did not become worthy of you. For if he had been worthy, then he would not have tasted death. Okay, this one to me almost seems like it needs other information to go with it. We know about Adam. Adam and creation and whatnot is really not talked about in the Gospel of Thomas. So bringing Adam into this, we have to look at something different. We've got to look at a bigger picture. I've got a video that I made called We Are All Adam and Eve or something like that. I'll post a link to it down below. I'll briefly go over it here just so we can talk about this verse. In it, I present the theory that Adam and Eve are each one of us, that Adam is us as we are born, our infancy, and that as we grow in the Garden of Eden, which is a blissful place, we're blissful as children, that we eventually have a part of us that emerges. Eve comes from us. Eve is born out of the side, created out of Adam's rib. So these two are obviously two parts of the same being. I call that the conscious and the subconscious. They might have thought the conscious and the soul. At any rate, it's an obscure teaching that predates Jesus by maybe a couple thousand years, at least 1,500 years. And of course, then the subconscious goes on, Eve, to live life, experience things that are not beneficial, comes back and shares it with the consciousness, and we fall apart. We lose nirvana. We lose the kingdom of heaven within. I view and interpret that story in such a way that we grow up from children where we are pure, and we learn and we pick up all of the things in our brains and store in our brains the pain, the shame, the hurt from childhood. If indeed that has been the case, a lot of people come from hurt places. It may not have been pain, shame, and abuse. It may have been just doing things that are incorrect, that are wrong, that are hurtful. And you don't know that. We're growing up and just having life experiences. You're being bombarded from things from your family, from relatives that are telling you what to believe. And as a child, you just accept that. You don't know any different. So you're being wired and you become separated. And in Moses' vernacular, we're kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So then I'm presenting the idea here that Adam is a metaphoric reference of us when we're children, and that the great power and the great wealth is that enlightenment that we're born with. But we leave it behind because we find it to be unworthy. We're too interested and trained to be other ways. And if we hadn't done that, if he had been worthy, if we had stuck with being Adam, then he would not have tasted death. Adam died by our hands, by our development, by our growth. And again, it's metaphoric references here. Okay, let's move on to verse 86. Jesus says, "Foxes have their holes and birds have their nest, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head down and to rest." You'd think it was meant to rhyme, huh? Except that this was not written in English to begin with. Okay, the second line here is the one that's important. The first one is just a setup. The Son of Man, Hebrew, son of Adam. We are the offspring of that child. We want to get back to that. No place to lay down and to rest. It's an ongoing thing. It's a diligent process to get to the kingdom of heaven within. It's not something you could do by taking some time on a weekend or evenings. It's an ongoing process. It is a life quest to get there. Don't rest. Keep at it. Moving on to number 87. Jesus says, "Wretched is the body that depends on a body, and wretched is the soul that depends on these two." Okay, I've got another partial here. Wretched is the body that depends on a body. What is a body? The next line, wretched is the soul that depends on these two. We know what the soul means to them. The body, is that your consciousness? Or is this just literally that it's a monastic teaching that if you live your life depending on other people for your existence, then that's wretched? I don't know. That doesn't sound quite right. I don't think that is important. What I think is important is the next line. And wretched is the soul that depends on these two. The soul, we know, I believe, is the subconscious mind. That doesn't mean that there is or isn't a soul or an energy being that lives on beyond us. There's never been any evidence of that, except that we believe that that's the case. In their day, when they saw life and they saw humans functioning, they saw two parts of the way a human operated. They knew that a human had a mind and made decisions, and when that mind was not making decisions, there was something in the background on autopilot, helping you get your things done, helping you move around. There were parts of you that would act out that you didn't consciously want. As far as they were concerned, in my theoretical application here, that was the soul. It would have made perfect sense. If we lived 2,000 years ago with no knowledge whatsoever of the brain, the conscious and the subconscious mind, we would have also said, oh yeah, I see that. That's the soul. It would have made perfect sense to us. What we have then is wretched is the soul that depends on these two. The body, the physical, that lives the physical life. If you have a soul that is dependent upon your consciousness, that means your soul is made by your consciousness. It's a product of your consciousness. It relies on your physical capacity to see the world, to be what it is, to have its identity. That means you're dead, you're blind, you're asleep, whatever terms are that cover that. You want your life being controlled by the soul, by the choices that you've made and the programming that you've done in your own head rather than the other way around. Okay, now verse number 88. Jesus says, "The messengers and the prophets are coming to you, and they will give you what belongs to you. And you in turn, give to them what you have in your hands, and say to yourselves, when will they come and take what belongs to them?" Okay, got another 50-50 on this one. First line, piece of cake. The messengers and the prophets have been around for a long time. Remember, there's an earlier verse about the prophets before Jesus. And he mentioned to them, you forgot about the one in your presence. The prophets have been around for a long time teaching this same thing in their own ways, at their own time, with their own people. Everybody from Lao Tzu to Buddha to all of the biblical prophets. They aren't physically coming to teach you, but this is a case of when you seek, you will find. When you knock, it will be open to you. When you want knowledge, when you have a burning desire to figure out stuff, the answers are going to come to you. In this realm, in this arena, I don't know that they come. I mean, you can't sit and think, I want lottery numbers, and they appear. It doesn't work like that. But if you're like, oh my God, I need to know what enlightenment is. I need to figure out what to do for this step or that step. Those things come to you. And you've probably already experienced some of that already. So they will give you what belongs to you. What belongs to you is, this belongs to everybody. And if you want to know it, you're going to find out. Then it falls apart for me. I look at this and go, what belongs to them? What I don't know what it means to give them what you have in your hands, unless it's somehow referenced to holding something in the physical and you need to give up the physical. When will they come and take what belongs to them? Yeah, I'm lost on that. I got no idea. That one gets set off to the side. I'm not going to discount it. I'm just going to scratch my head and think, it may have been worded wrong. It may have been copied down wrong. It may have been added in by somebody uninspired, or I don't understand it yet. So, yeah. Moving on to verse 89. Jesus says, "Why do you wash the outside of the cup? Do you not understand that the one who created the inside is also the one who created the outside?" This is a fun reference and a pretty easy one to see. We recognize this from the Bible as well. That we are the cup. And there's an outside of us and there's an inside of us. Washing the outside of the cup is analogous to putting on a show, making everything look good. Everything's fine. Oh yes, I'm doing my classes and it's just wonderful. While inside you're coming apart. And it might be a lot milder than that. The thing is we tend to outwardly try to express one thing while inwardly is where the real issue is. The one who created the inside is also the one who created the outside. That's each one of us. Each one of us created our inside. And the way that we created the inside is by using our perceptions to judge the things that we see and have experienced, and we store it that way. That is how we create it. Not necessarily that we did something, performed an act that was hurtful to ourselves. Somebody else may have. But moreover, and it's not always something that somebody else has done to us. It's just things that we learn. It's judgments that we get. We might look at people and think, God, what a bum. Look how lazy those people are. Look at, things that are really not our business. They're not productive. But how we perceive it and how we store it is what creates us. We need to wash the inside of the cup. The outside of the cup follows. As within, so without. Moving on to verse 90. Jesus says, "Come to me, for my yoke is gentle, and my lordship is mild, and you will find repose for yourselves." This one is not a spiritual teaching. This is one that simply is telling people that it's a gentle path. It's an easy thing. But you have to go look for it. You have to give up life. Life itself is the complicated thing, being wrapped up in work and relationships and all the crazy things that we get involved in and commit ourselves to and get wrapped up in and view and inundate ourselves with. That's where it becomes complicated. Letting that stuff go and being a practitioner of this path, one finds that life is much simpler. It's easier. And it's easy to rest, the repose, the relaxation. When you get there, okay, it's peaceful. You're letting go of the world and life. You're not disconnecting from the planet. You're mentally disconnecting from the things that have got you stressed and strained. But you're giving up and understanding what you don't have control over and disconnecting from all of it. This is a very monastic path. What would a monk do? What would they get wrapped up in? They would relax and be peaceful and set an example somewhere. That's where it is mild. And then when you do, you get to relax. It's repose, rest. Okay, now verse 91. They said to him, "Tell us who you are so that we may believe in you." He said to them, "You examine the face of sky and earth, but the one who is before you, you have not recognized, and you do not know how to test this opportunity." Okay, we've got a fun, easy one here. The first question is just them asking, "Who are you so we can believe in you?" It's a setup. And the response is that you figure out the face of the earth and the sky. You know what the weather's going to be like. Red sky at night, sailor's delight. I'm sure they knew things like that. Clouds coming, going to be rain. You know how to figure things out when you're looking at the planet, at the physical, at the outward things. But the one who is before you, you have not recognized. The one who is before them is who? It's themselves. It's us. We have a difficult time recognizing ourselves because we don't know how to do that. We do that by examining ourselves, by observing our output, by being able to pay attention to our thoughts. Maybe you get angry from time to time and you just live life going, I got mad because they did something or because they did something or because of something somewhere. You're not examining yourself. You're simply reacting and responding. When you're on this path and you can examine yourself and you do begin to recognize what you are, then you will get angry. And after you get angry, you will remember, oh, I didn't want to do that. Why did that happen? Where does it come from? What is it about my belief system that makes me angry? What can I do to change that so it doesn't happen again? and you take steps to fix it. And then time goes on, and maybe you don't get angry again, but maybe you do. And when you do, if you do, you have the capacity to say, oh, there it is again. I'm still stuck in that. I must not have it fixed. What do I have to do? You will continue that process. You need to recognize yourself by observing your output. You watch your fruits. The self-observation is an incredibly critical, it's a very important part of the process of trying to get to the kingdom of heaven within. That peace. You have to see what you are made out of. This is where, in Indian terminology, they call it upaguru. This is actually, there's a number of definitions for that, but the upaguru is the guru nearby. This is where you and your life becomes your guru, as long as you have the capacity to honestly observe your actions and step back and look at it and say, boy, I am still doing something wrong. If of course you're saying I am justified, then, well, there's a problem. And you may be in relationships or things like that that are very taxing on you that you need to be away from. There may be environments and things that are very hurtful to you, that are very toxic, that you might have to take a hard look at. A lot of times it's just relationships, and we have to figure out how to deal with that. Sometimes you might be doing a job that is harmful to other people. I don't know, making weapons, making cigarettes, stuff like that. Not many people are in that category. The important thing is the one before you that you need to recognize is you. We are always there. Testing the opportunity, doing exactly what I just described. Verse 92. Jesus says, "Seek and you will find. But the things you asked me about in past times, and what I did not tell you in that day, now I am willing to tell you, but you do not seek them." Okay, puzzling? Not so. I had personal experience that drilled this one into my head. Seek and you will find, like I've talked about throughout and through parts of the other videos. When you want to know something about this spiritual search with a passion, you get it. There's other things that come too. It's just not just the spiritual search, but it's inward looking things. It can happen outward as well, but like I said, you don't get lottery numbers, you don't get what to invest, things like that. I don't know why. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Seek and you will find. This is a spiritual teaching on a spiritual path. When you have the intensity and you're like, oh my God, I want to change my life. I'm tired of this. I'm going to do this. When you have that kind of fire, when you have that kind of intensity, the answers will come to you. Seek and you will find. But the things you asked me about in past times and what I did not tell you in that day, the answers don't just pop into your head. I want to know something. And magically, numbers print in your imagination or something like that appear on the mirror, or somebody walks up and says something randomly that is your answer. It can take a while. You're looking for an answer, and for the cosmos, whatever the mechanism is out there, and I'm sure it's a natural mechanism. The desire to know something is almost like you're creating a void that can only be filled by the answer. But you got to wait for whoever has that answer to come by. There might have to be a series of circumstances, going someplace, being in the right place at the right time. Somebody else that has the answer has to be there. The answers unfold, but they don't unfold instantly. Some are a little quicker than others, and maybe some are slower. So I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I've got it in one of my videos. I don't remember which one. It's not one of these Gospel of Thomas ones. I call it my 747 story because it was like a miracle sort of story. I was laid off, and I was working with a agriculture company trying to develop a remote controlled aerial platform for taking aerial photography of agriculture fields. This is pre-drone days. And I was working on that, trying to make ends meet. I couldn't find work at that time. And at the same time, while I was laid off, I'm stressed. My kids are young. I'm thinking, what is there about life? I had already discovered this idea about offloading the things that I was carrying, my baggage, talking to people about being molested, and all the things that I had hidden in my closets, tucked away, that I was fearful of letting out. All those things that I thought I need to keep them inside of me. I learned that I had to offload that stuff, that I had to make friends with it, that I had to make friends with the skeletons in my closet. I had to get rid of my demons, pull the weeds, all those metaphoric things, and I did that. But then I didn't know what to do next. I was like, now what? I don't know where to go from here. One night I'm reading the paper. We're in a small rental home, this old farmhouse, and very cheap. We could afford it at that time. My daughter, my oldest daughter, about 8 years old at the time, was in her bedroom, and she yelled out to me, "Daddy, what time is it?" And I've got a digital clock over on the table in the room where I was. And it was in the evening, and it was 7:47 at night. So I yelled back at her at 7:47. And within 1 or 2 days, the exact same thing happened. And she yelled at me and said, "What time is it?" And I was like, 7:47. It was just a coincidence. I didn't think anything of it. I just kind of smiled and thought, how cute. Then I'm looking for a job. I'm driving down the freeway, and I'm not paying attention. There's this truck driving beside me, kind of speeding up and slowing down. And I wasn't really watching it at first. I was thinking about the job interview I had that I was heading to. Kind of had some paper there that it was pre-GPS. So had a map printed out. And I finally realized, what's going on with this truck up here? And I look up, and it's trailer number 747. And I was like, that's pretty weird. Within a couple of days, I am doing another job interview. And I don't make the right turn. I'm not in the right lane. Like I said, it's pre-GPS, so I know I have to make a turn, but I'm kind of in an unfamiliar place. I end up in a residential area, having to turn around and come back out. I pull into the driveway to come around. House number 747. This kept happening. The number 747 started becoming so prevalent that I was laughing it off. I remember looking skyward at one point. Yeah, I don't know why. You just do that habitually, going, yeah, okay, I got it. I was working with that agriculture company trying to develop the aerial platform thing. 747's an airplane, right? I'm thinking, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to do this. It's going to turn out to be something big. I focused on it. Turns out it got shut down by the FAA as being kind of dangerous, and it never did work out. Well, before it got shut down, though, I was friends with somebody who was in the model industry, and he went to church, and he told me that there was some people in their church that wanted to get a hold of me. They were some electronics engineering kind of geeks that were looking for somebody to help them develop a small helicopter with a camera on board that would go to an accident scene. They could fly it and read the hazard placard or something to see if there was a hazard spill before sending people up or something like that. And I thought, that sounds kind of interesting. Sure, why not? So the guy emailed me, and he said, yeah, I'd like to get you involved perhaps here. I'm going to let you get into our website and see what we're about. You can let us know. So he sends me login information to get in there, and created a temporary password for me. And the password was Luke 747. And my middle name is Luke. So I was like, oh my God, it's like you get chills. This is coming up and coming up and coming up. This is 2 years approximately after the first time my daughter said, Daddy, what time is it? Yeah, a long time. And I email him back real quick and ask him, what does that mean? Where did you get that? Where do you pull Luke 747 from? And he emailed back and said, really? Read the Bible, silly. And I was like, what? I don't read the Bible. I'm not a Christian. I have a Bible. I've got all kinds of books that are, I got Qurans and everything else. So I'm open-minded. Anyway, I read Luke 7:47. And it's the story about the lady who was visiting Jesus. He's at some friend's house, some well-to-do people who have him over for dinner, and this sinner woman, she's called, comes in, and she doesn't have any words or anything, but she's anointing his hair with oil and washing his feet with her hair. And his friends ask him, why are you letting this sinner woman do this stuff to you? And he said something to them like, she has not ceased to give me this attention since I've been here. You guys haven't offered me anything. And then out of the blue at the end of it, the 747, for her sins, which are many, are completely forgiven because she loved much. And I was like, bingo, that's it. The sins are not the things that you've done wrong. The sins are the things that you carry up here. Not only does love replace all of the things that hurt you, the people that have hurt you, you have to love them. What do you want in life? You want love. You become the embodiment of love. This was the answer to my question, what do I do next? It's like, well, you cleaned out all of your baggage. Now you're grumpy and wondering what to do next. Become love. That's this story right here. But the things you asked me about in past times and what I did not tell you in that day, now I am willing to tell you, but you do not seek them. This is reference to people who maybe ask questions and they don't get an answer right away, and they dismiss it and they go about their business. The answer comes and they're not receptive to it anymore. They're not paying attention. That's this verse right here. Okay, moving on to verse 93. Do not give what is holy to the dogs, lest they throw it upon the dunghill. Do not throw pearls to swine, lest they turn them into mud. Okay, both of these verses mean the same thing. It's just two different ways of saying the same thing. And you'll notice as you go through these works that there's a handful of really solid teachings said in a bunch of different ways, said in different kinds of cryptic verse, but they all mean the same. That's what we're seeing right here. And again, I've got a story of mine that I can tell, because you look at this and think, what does this mean? Wouldn't you want to teach this to everybody? Wouldn't it be helpful? Wouldn't it be nice? And you can. People won't listen unless they're really interested and you've got something that captures a certain individual's attention. People don't change their minds when somebody comes up and starts preaching to them. That's usually offensive and it puts people off. People look for answers and they go seek out who it is. So as you're sitting there trying to spew this is the right thing on people, it's not going to work. This has a deeper meaning, or it has something more important than that. And I'll tell you what happened to me. When I did realize that I had to unleash or let go of my fears and talk out and expose the things that I was hiding. The stuff that you fight against that you don't want out. They're your demons, your monsters, or whatever. You hate them. You don't like them. And the harder you try to put them away, they still come out and they hurt you. And it seems like the more attention and hatred and anger and shame that you hold towards them, the stronger they are. And when I realized that I actually needed to make friends with that stuff, to get it out into the open, to surface it and to talk about it, and I did do that and I made that step, I swear it was 2 weeks before I felt the ground under my feet. I was so uplifted and so enlightened by it. I thought, oh my gosh, this is magical. Everybody is going to want to know. And so you tell them. And I bet you half of America has been molested, maybe more. You will find people when you start doing this and telling them what they should do. Here's the way to handle it. You just have to talk about it. Boy, that's a big mistake. I have had people, not physical, but very violently angry at me, finger like in my face, yelling and screaming, you don't know anything about my life. You yeah, I've suffered some wrath for trying to convey that this is the right thing to do without realizing, oh, they have to want it for themselves. They are holding their own issues behind their walls of anger and hatred and shame. And it's not okay to come up and poke at those. And, you have the best intentions, but individually, personally, think about it for yourself. If you have an issue like that, think about telling somebody if you haven't before. I bet your palms are sweating right now just considering it. Yeah, it's a scary thing. You don't push it on people. Yeah. And the reference here, the dogs and the swine, I don't know completely about Middle Eastern culture, but certainly with Islam and the Muslim culture, dogs were a bad thing to have around. You might have some that you kept in the yard that were guard dogs, but dogs were not looked upon as a good thing. And pigs were not looked upon as a good thing. They didn't cook like we did. They probably got worms and got sick from them. So these were really just bad things to have around. The reference here is just not that those people are swine and dogs, horrible things, but that you're not going to get happy or good results. Yeah, I'll let that one go. You get the idea. Verse 94. Jesus says, the one who seeks will find, and the one who knocks, to that one will it be opened. We got that one right? I think so. We can move right on. Verse 95. Jesus says, if you have money, do not lend it out at interest. Rather, give it to the one whom you will not get it back. This one is a lesson in the proper way to give. And there's a reason for it. There's a mechanics to it. Remember things like karma, or what Jesus would say, the measure you mete unto others will be likewise meted unto you. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. How you judge others will be judged unto you, etc., etc. The karma concept is there across the board in different verbiage. When you give at interest, you're giving with the caveat. Here, I'm giving you this, but I have some expectations. That's the deal. If you give unconditionally, somebody needs help and you give them the help and you just do the right thing and you don't have any strings attached to it, you're just giving for the goodness of your heart. That person can't give back to you, but you've created a cosmic void, I don't know what other term to use, where when you need help, it's going to happen from somewhere else. It's going to be the same way. You have kind of left open that condition of giving to receive something back when you need it to be received as well. This balance happens that way. So ultimately and literally, if you give then with expectations of something in return, that's what you're creating in yourself as well. And when somebody helps you back, expect it to be, here's help, but here's what I expect back in return. Verse 96, Jesus says, the kingdom of the Father is like a woman. She took a little bit of yeast. She hid it in dough and made it into huge loaves of bread. Whoever has ears should hear. Okay, this one looks pretty standard and everybody should have a handle on it. Once you begin this process, it's kind of an exponential growth. It continually enhances and gets more and more. Don't always just think of it, though, as a Jesus teaching, but as a spiritual teaching that is an enlightenment teaching. And the more you shed, the better it gets. The more things you get rid of, then the more it grows. The process it's just that way. I think everybody can probably see that. Okay, verse 97. Jesus says, "The kingdom of the Father is like a woman who is carrying a jar with flour. While she was walking on the way, very distant from home, the handle of the jar broke, and the flour leaked out on the path. But she did not know it. She had not noticed the problem. When she reached her house, she put the jar down on the floor and found it empty." Okay, this is one I don't really see clearly. I see a possibility here, but I'm not going to be real confident with it. I'll talk about what I see and what I believe and just set it off to the side. What we basically have is the woman with the jar and the flour, and the kingdom of the Father is like this whole story where it slowly leaks out on the way. When she gets home, she sets the jar down and it's empty. We know the Jesus teaching, blessed is the poor in spirit. You're looking for this emptiness. The question then becomes, are we the jar and we want to leak out whatever it is we have? You know, the flour you would think is a good thing, but maybe that's not a factor in this story. Maybe the factor in this story is that the jar became empty. It doesn't say whether that's beneficial or not, or whether she complained about that or not. She was carrying the jar with flour. She didn't go buy it. Anyway, I don't know what that could mean. She did not know it. She had not noticed a problem. So that kind of gives the idea that she wasn't doing this actively. She was just not paying attention, and slowly it leaked out. Does that mean if we ignore things, they slowly dissipate? I think in some cases, we could say yes to that. Things that have happened to you long ago that were problems at one point in time, but you don't focus on them. You don't think about them. The time is gone. You haven't really had a reason for them to resurface. So perhaps you don't even remember them. And that over time, they just gradually go away. I think that this would have to fit with all the rest of the teachings, though, becoming the embodiment of love. That this part of your brain that holds electrochemical, emotional states of being are gradually dissipated by a different feeling, a different sensation. 747. She loved much, so her sins were forgiven. In this case, like in her case, it didn't say she had to go through and weed the garden and do a bunch of things like that. She just became love. And maybe this is just another process. Maybe there's this idea that you can just turn away from things and they'll gradually go away. But the things that come out and surface and create problems for you, you have to be more aggressive with those. Perhaps, I don't know, could that be it? Possibly so. I think that being empty is what we're looking for. Leaking out things along the way. I've really found it beneficial at some point to aggressively go after the things that surface from me. I see a monster come up, it's like, I'll go make friends with it, seek it out, go resolve it if you see it. But, there's times where, I used to get angry and mad all the time. And I think I resolved everything. I don't have anything that makes me angry and mad anymore, but I can still be quick-tempered sometimes. Is that simply wired in habits, response habits? There's nothing really there that's an issue. What I have to do is just pay attention and keep reminding myself when that happens, hey, chill out, create new habits. I think the possibility is there for that. Looks like a viable verse. I'm not sure if I have it. And, well, that's it. I'm going to bring a close to this video. It's been an hour. I think each of these about this length is probably good. It might be kind of difficult to sit through much longer than that, but you can always just click through and find the verses. I mark them with chapters in there. So anyway, I hope you got something out of this video. I did. I always do. I learn more about this every time I dig into them and talk about them, and this is helping me tremendously. It's helping me grow. I appreciate it. Well, take care of each other, be safe, and see you in the next video.